Before I start this review, I want to say that this movie came with some trailers before it, and one of the, I just so happened to walk out of the room when the trailer started, and I came back in, and it was playing a trailer for The Condemned with Steve Austin. And I don't know why, it just took me out of it so hard in the moment. It just reminded me of the good old days when horror was on VHS and you had really cool trailers at the time. I don't know, these older films being released nowadays on DVD. I mean, this DVD is a little older, but to get trailers for a newer movie that is not horror, has nothing going for it that's like this. It's not really a good movie. I did see that movie. It was whatever. It's just, I don't know. In the moment, it really bummed me out. Like, I was like, I just missed the old VHS days. I miss going to the fucking video store and not only renting something new, something exciting, something that had this amazing cover art and blah, 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 but popping it in and seeing these amazing, cool trailers for films that were just about to come out, or probably already were, because you were renting movies that were a year or two old at that point, and then you could like write them down and see if your video store had them the next day or whatever. And I don't know, it just really got me bummed and nostalgic about my past. But we're horror fans, and those days are gone. But there's things about now that are awesome too, that you have the ability to get any one of these. But I don't know, it just bummed me out in the moment. So anyway, let me get to the review. Night of the Demons 2. Just finished this, and I'm actually pretty excited to talk about it. I got a lot of shit I want to say. I'm going to warn, though, that I think with older films like this, that it's okay to have some spoilers in it. I mean, you're talking about a movie that's over 20 years old now. I'm not going to get into crazy spoilers by any means, but I will be talking about the film. So, anyway, let's get to Night of the Demons 2. This DVD is not great, by the way. For one, it's full screen, which I fucking hate. And number two, there was a little bit of video distortion at the very top of the screen. And I'm not sure if that was my copy or not, but I don't know if there's any other version of it. But if there is, I would pick up that one. This one takes place 6 years, I should say, this movie was made 6 years after. I don't think that the film actually discloses the amount of time between the two films, but at least it does deal with this. And I was very excited to see the actress who played Angela in the first one also plays Angela in the second and the third, so she does reprise her role, which actually kind of brings up my first thing I want to talk about, is that Angela is kind of a horror icon. Maybe nowhere near as big as Freddy or Jason or things like, villains like that, but Leprechaun, or, this, I don't want to say who the killer is in Sleepaway Camp in case you haven't seen that, but something along those lines, where it's like, I don't feel like Angela gets enough credit, because she's a really cool villain, and she's pretty iconic. Her look is very iconic. When you see her on the covers, I mean, you know her immediately when you see her if you know the movie. So, I don't know. I feel like she should get a tad more credit, because I do like her as a horror villain, and she does reprise her role in all three films. Now, the writer of one is back here, and it definitely shows. The dialogue is very fun, witty, silly. All of it feels, very similar in its script. The director is different, and it shows a little. This movie is about a group of Catholic school kids who are, they're at a Catholic school. They don't leave, and they're banned from going to the dance, so they skip the dance and go to Hull House. Literally pretty much the exact same premise as the first one. Except for in this one, they actually bring the Curse of Hull House back with them from Hull House to the Catholic school. Which, as I said, is a minor spoiler, but I liked that the movie, didn't just have them do exactly the same thing. Just go to Hull House, everyone dies, the end kind of thing. And I also like that they changed up the characters. It isn't a bunch of punk rock type kids. These are Catholic school kids. A lot of the same stereotypes, archetypes, things like that are here for sure. That's pretty much, what you're going to get from any horror movie, especially in the 80s. So I wasn't super surprised about that. I like that the lipstick made a return. That was cool. I was like, as infamous as that scene is, that lipstick is almost a character in itself. And to see it come back and actually play a substantial role here was pretty cool. I also like that Hull House looked like Hull House, in the second film. I'm glad they didn't do a Halloween 5 situation where all of a sudden the Myers house is a fucking mansion next to no other houses. God, that's still the dumbest fucking thing ever. I don't give a shit what anybody says. Like, oh, well, they were trying to have a more gothic tone in this. Fuck that. That was awful. I remember even as a kid, I saw that when I was like 7 years old, and I was just like, what the fuck? That is not the Myers house, not even close. It's not even like anywhere near similar. It's not near houses. It's not structurally. I mean, there's a basement in this one and an attic, and not that I'm aware if the house in Myers house had this or that. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that too much. This is a Night of the Demons 2 review, but damn, the Myers house in 5 pisses me off. So I was very happy to see that come back. It was fun to see Christine Taylor in here, the girl who plays Marcia in the Brady Bunch, and I think she's married to Ben Stiller, if I remember correctly, and she's been in a bunch of his movies. And in the movie, this movie was made 1 year previous to that movie. In the movie, one of the characters jokingly calls her Marcia, which this was made a year before, so I don't know. I don't know if it was just she looks so much like Marcia Brady that he did it, and I don't know. It's pretty interesting to hear. I was like, oh wow, Marcia, okay. This is the director of Leprechaun 3 and Leprechaun in Space. So you can see why it's probably a little down, even though I do enjoy. I'm actually thinking about rewatching the Leprechauns and reviewing them. I'm not sure. We'll see about that one. He also did Dead End Drive-In, which I know a lot of people love, Australian thing. I wasn't a huge fan of that. So yet again, not a big one for me. I have to talk about how not only in this movie, but in the last movie as well, that Hull House is this rundown, abandoned type of like mansion in the middle of nowhere. Every fucking thing in the house has cobwebs on it. Everything, all the wood is rotting. Things are falling off of the walls. Everything in the house is just, all fucked up. But the beds have like fresh, nice linen on them so that, the teenagers want to fuck on them. And they just get in bed and they're just having a good time, and there's no dust on the bed covers. It just makes me laugh. It's like, really? This is so stupid. Not that it matters, but man. I also like that this movie reminds me of a time when rock actually used to be cool. They're at the dance, and like as soon as the nun walks out of the room and they can put on what they want, like people throw on rock music. Now, of course, the director, the people who were behind the movie picked the music for the film, so the kids would dance to whatever. But this really was a time when kids were actually into rock and roll, and it just took me back to a time where rock and roll actually mattered, where we didn't have to just listen to rap and pop, which is literally an electronic, and it's like all there is. Rock seems to just be an underground thing now. And it's nice to be reminded of a time when music was fucking cool. So this movie reminded me of something I miss heavily. Now, another couple things I really enjoyed was, for one, the nun preparing for battle like fucking Rambo. That shit made me laugh out loud. And this is this last positive here is definitely going to kind of segue into my negatives. And that is the final showdown between the kids and Angela. The big climax, the practical effects, what happens with Angela, this and that, look awesome. The defeat of her, the whole thing. I'm sure you can figure out what happens here, so it's not a big spoiler there. But it looks so cool. I love what they did with her. I love how it goes down. All that looked great. Now that will be, as I said, going into my negatives. Besides that, there really isn't a lot of practical effects. There isn't a lot of gore. There isn't a lot of kills. Like, a lot of the few kills that there are, they seem to mostly be done off screen or like cut a head off and then they just like pan away as it happens and then they come back and the guy's just grabbing and his neck's missing. I don't know. I was really kind of let down by that aspect, which I feel like films like this really needed. I know I kind of beat it over the head that gore is so important and this and that, but like in films like this, it is. You don't need gore in Session 9. You don't need gore in The Babadook. You don't need gore in The Shining. You don't need gore in psychological thrillers, in psychological horror breakdowns, like something like that. But when you have a demon movie where all the characters are ridiculous, all the situations are fantastical, all of the dialogue is mostly silly, and people are getting ripped apart by demons right and left. It needs it. It very much needs it. And I don't know if it's a budget thing. More than likely it is. And it hurts. And it's a kind of a bummer. I really did enjoy this movie. I'm not going to say don't watch it for sure. If you liked the first one, you should probably like this one. But it's a downgrade. And one of the biggest reasons it is a downgrade, not a huge downgrade, but as I said, the practical effects, the gore is lacking here. I also was, as I reviewed in my last one, how much I loved the opening credits of the first one with this animated opening with cool music. And this opening was just standard, sweeps of scenery and certain parts of the house and just filling the screen with images and then just titles and credits flashing on the screen. Just boring. The music was whatever. It was just, you could tell it was very much missing that animated element like the first one had. That was a bummer. Yet again, budget issue? Who knows? I don't know. Director's choice? There's this hilarious scene. This isn't really negative. It just made me laugh. Where everyone is terrified, out of their minds. They got to get out of the house right now. Let's all leave. They all agree to leave. And then they get to the door. And one of the characters is like, oh, wait. Hold on. I got to go pee first. And they're like, you can hold it. And she's like, no, I can't. And then she runs off. And they're like, all right, we'll just wait here. It's like, really? You're going to wait for her to go to the bathroom? She can't just wait. And then she doesn't even go. So she ends up just not going, and then they leave like a couple minutes later. I just thought that was so stupid. And this movie's pacing is a little off too. The horror really doesn't start until over an hour into this movie. Like, it's mostly just kids wanting to get laid, dealing with Catholic school, telling the story of Hull House. It's all set up until like the last hour. Through the first hour, and you don't really get anything until the last 30 minutes. And as I said, that last 30 minutes isn't filled with a lot of fun gag scenes like it should be. Now that kind of makes it look like makes it sound like this movie is not great, but I think it was a really fun time. still, because of the dialogue, because of the characters. And another huge positive, which I can't believe I personally went over, the girls in this movie. Some of the girls, most of the girls in this movie are gorgeous. And there's a lot of tits, wonderful, great tits in this movie. It opens with girls' tits. It's got a ton of them throughout it, and they're great. So I don't know why I missed that one, but so that's a fucking positive. But also, in addition, the characters are really fun. The dialogue is well written. You can tell that the same writer came back, and that's about it. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the third one. I've heard it's a pretty big downgrade from the first two. And this is the first time I've ever known this to happen. I mean, I'm sure this has happened other times, but the director of the first one came back to write the third one. He had nothing to do with the writing of the first or the second. He was just the director of the first. And he came back to write the third one, and then it was directed by somebody else. I thought that was really weird when I looked that up. I was like, really? Okay, interesting. So I'm curious on what this third one's going to bring. It's actually queued up in my room right now on the TV, waiting for me to press play. So I'm going to go press play on that. Anyway, so I definitely think check it out if you're a big fan of the first one. I think this is a good follow-up. Not an amazing one, but definitely worth your time.